Alright, at this center you're going to be finding mean absolute deviation. So let's take a look at it. When we're doing mean absolute deviation, we don't need to worry about the order of the numbers because we're not worrying about finding the median. We're basically just going to take the average of these numbers and then subtract them and find from the mean and take its absolute value of each one of those answers, add them up, and then take the mean of those numbers, and then that gives us our mean absolute deviation. So I'm going to break this down in steps just like we did in class. So first we're going to do step 1. So I'm going to write that right here. Step 1. We're going to find the average of these 5 numbers. So what we're going to do is we have 40 plus 55. And I'm going to go ahead and mark these off, and you can mark yours off with the dry erase as you do it. 60 plus 48 plus 57. Once we got these numbers added up, we're simply going to divide them by the amount of numbers that we added. And we added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. So we're going to divide by 5. Make sure you put a decimal after the 5. That way if it's a fraction, it'll automatically convert it to a decimal. And let's go ahead and go to our calculator and put this in. Alright, we have 40 plus 55 plus 60 plus 48 plus 57. So at this point it's good to just look at the numbers on your calculator and count them, and you can say, okay, well I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers, and double check them. Once you check it and everything looks fine, hit enter, then hit divide and go ahead and put your number in. So I'm going to put 5 and I'm going to put a decimal after it just to make sure it converts it to a decimal. Hit enter, and that gives me 52. So now I've got my mean of my first data. So what we're going to do now is subtract each one of those numbers that we had in our table from the mean, and that's step 2. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and move this up a little bit. I've already got my numbers written down right here, and I'm going to go ahead and go to step 2. So I'm going to write on here step 2, because we found in step 1 that our mean was equal to 52. So now I'm going to go ahead and mark these off one at a time and put them in absolute brackets, absolute value brackets it is. So we have 40 minus the 52, and then I have 55 minus 52, and I have 60 minus 52, and 48 minus 52, and 57 minus 52. So once you write these out, let me move it up just a little bit, you can go ahead and fill in your answers with the calculator. I noticed some of y'all, because you can see all the answers in there, and these are only 5 digits, you can actually see all that information in your calculator, and if that's the way you want to do it, I'm not going to tell you not to. However, what I will say is if you write this out, it'll make sure that you don't miss one of the numbers, because that is something that I saw in the class where several people were missing numbers. So I'm going to go to the calculator real quick so we can work these out. Okay, so the first one we had 40 minus 52. Notice that gives me a negative 12, but because we put it in those absolute value brackets, we're just going to take the positive answer. So it's going to be positive 12. And then we have 55 minus 52. And we have 60 minus 52. And then we have 48 minus 52. And 57 minus 52. So what we need to do now is just write down the positive value of all these answers, and then we're going to add them together and take the mean of them for our step 3. Alright, so we had 12, 3, 8, 4, and 5. And those are all of our numbers. So now for step 3, and I'm just going to write it right over here to the side. I'm going to put step 3. I'm going to take all these numbers right here and add them up. So I have 12 plus 3 plus 8 plus 4 plus 5. And then I'm going to divide that by 5 and put a decimal after it. And this will give me my mean absolute deviation. Alright, so let's go ahead and put those in. We have 12 plus 3 plus 8 plus 4 plus 5. And then we're going to divide that by 5 and put a decimal after it. Hit enter, and it gives us 6.4. So we're going to record that, 6.4, and that is our mean absolute deviation. Notice we took 3 steps. We found the mean of the data first, then we subtracted each one of these data points from the mean. Then when we got our answer, that was absolute value, so they were all positive numbers, we added them up and then divided them by 5 again, which is the number of data that we had, and we got our final answer, which is the mean absolute deviation. Now go ahead and complete the rest of the problems at this center.